Hello everyone. Since everyone wanted to see how I did those rigs, I wanted to do like a rig for the video to show you how to rig, but then I thought, why don't I just show it now through this rig that I'm hoping I could put in videos. So as you can see here, I have all my layers separated. This is the head, and I have all of them labeled. It is very, very important that you label them. So I have everything labeled, everything separated, and we can put all those in order too. Now, when you import, I did a Photoshop file. I highly recommend you do Photoshop files. You can actually, if you use something like Procreate or I use Clip Studio Paint, you can export something as a PSD file and then add that to your Google Drive and then put that in After Effects, and it works really well. Like I have my layers here, which will be important if you want to add effects to like the line art and not the colors like I do, but that's obviously just like a preference thing. That's what I like to do. Now, we can start rigging together. Another thing, another side tangent is sometimes when you import things into After Effects, they are not the correct size when you want to move them. Like the box that scales around the thing, goes around the entire composition, which is a no-no. A really easy way to do that I discovered by Googling it, if you open one of these compositions and then click this button down here, the region of interest, which is also an alt click, you can do that and you can do your scale, which obviously I've already done it. But to crop your compositions, you can go to composition and then crop comp to region of interest, and then that will crop it to the region of interest, and that should fix your composition scaling problems. Now, for the actual rigging, I'm gonna do something simple: the head to the body. So this is the head, and we're gonna rig it to the body. So first you put it in place wherever you want it, and then you are going to move the pan behind or anchor point to the joint that connects the neck. I'm gonna turn snapping off to get more direct, so we can put that there. Yippee! And then that makes it so if you press R to rotate, it'll rotate like a head should. Yeah, perfect. But if we want the head to be attached to the body, we have to child the head to the body. So we can click this little squiggle here or click one in the menu, but I like the squiggle because it's fun. Do head to torso. And now if you move the torso, it'll move the head too, and this will also go for if you rotate the torso. I don't think it goes for transparency, so if you want to do like a Cheshire Cat effect or something, that works. Otherwise, if you want to turn something transparent, just turn the whole elements, the whole rig transparent. I'd recommend that. But now that we have that, we can also, I also do this with the eyes. So these are all of my eyes in one file. Let me just make this easier and get the base one so I can line them up. They're already like pre-lined up in their own composition, and I just need to line them up to the head. I like to parent the eyes to the head or attach them. I'm not gonna say parent because that's super confusing. Attach the eyes to the head, and I usually like to not move them. If I do animate them, I'm going to be animating them in the actual eyes composition, and that's how I do lip sync, that's how I do blinks. You'll see lip sync in a second. I'll probably talk about that. And then we can do that with the rest of the limbs. So I'm gonna pause this recording while I attach the rest of the limbs, and I'll see you after that. It's literally the same thing. Like move your arm to your torso, move anchor point to the joint. That rhymes. Bars. Sorry. And then attach the arm to the torso, so you can see it moves. This is just a half body, but for full bodies it's the same thing, except what you would do is we can do that here with this puffball. So the puffball attaches kind of like how a joint would. You can parent it to the head which in turn is parented to the torso. So if you move the torso, the puffball will move, but if you just move the head, the puffball will also move. So that's kind of a cool thing you could do, especially if you're doing like legs or fingers or joints. But yeah, I'm gonna reattach this. I'm gonna pause so I can attach this, and I'll see you after that. Alright, so as you can see, I already attached everything. The only thing that shouldn't be attached to anything is your main torso or body part. Like, I can move everything, and then I could move the head, and it can like, ooh. Alright, and then the only thing you would do for that is, you know, always, I'm gonna do this to all of my layers right now. I'm going to hold down shift and go down to the very bottom and select all of them, hit the R, and then put rotation. I have seemed to forgotten to move one of the pivot points. Uno momento. But yeah, make sure you do that or it's gonna not work like a joint, and that will be super duper awkward. I'm also gonna do that for the puffball because I believe I have forgotten to do it for that. I'm gonna move it, since this is kind of like disconnecting, I'm gonna put it in between, or actually I'm gonna put it right on the tip of the hat because that's where it would rotate if it was connecting, but it is not. Alright, so now that you have everything rigged, if you want to do something really cool, with, especially if you have like a flowing element, like my little Sona actually has these like gills, so I'm going to go select the gills. I'm going to do the left one. You see the pivot point isn't exactly where the head, where you can still do this. So I'm going to rotate like, ooh, you can still move them. But what I like to do is I actually like to utilize the puppet pins. I usually like to do them the advanced one. So you can just click, drag down, and then select the puppet pins. And then hopefully this will not kill my computer. That would be really awkward. So I'm actually going to save real quick. Yeah, so I did that, sorry, I paused so you didn't see my file. So what you do is you go down here to your little things, and now since these are transparent and separated, you can usually move them independently if you have pins on them because they are counted as separate meshes and separate entities, which is a cool thing that I figured out. So if you put a pin at the end, and then at the other end, what you can do is move it like that, which is pretty cool, and with the advanced pins you can turn it. I usually like to turn it. So and also with the pins you do not have to turn on the animation tool, you can just move them and it will happen. So what I like to do is I like to start at the beginning where they are, and then maybe move down like a half a second, and then maybe go down. Maybe she's oscillating a little bit. That's not what that word means. And I like to turn this pin a little bit inwards, so the tip of the fin points inwards, and then turn this one a little bit outwards. I also like to drag this in a little bit. Yeah. And if you want it to kind of bounce back, you can actually find where the pins have been placed. I usually like to copy the first two pins, and drag them a little to the end and put them back. And then always, this will be super important later if you want your movements to look really nice and smooth. Keyframe assistant, easy ease, or even do FN plus shift plus the F3 button. That'll pull up your little menu. I don't know if you can't separate dimensions. You can't separate dimensions with those. But you can, you know, obviously take your little things. Oh, my bad. I'm gonna have to cut that part out. My bad. As I was saying, you can take those little things, you can move them so they're a lot smoother. I think you can, yeah. With these ones, it's a little harder to do like the fine, like curve movements, but you can easily get around that. But adding a little bounce back just makes it feel a lot more lively, and we will see that later. I am going to delete that because I do not want it to distract me. So I'm just gonna, and remember, if you want to get off the curve tool, it's just FN, Shift, F3 again. I'm gonna delete those pin movements. Delete those little pins. We're not gonna worry about those right now, but as you can see, if I highlight over them, it highlights them as separate meshes, which is cool. And if you want to add an effect to it, I recommend you also expand your mesh, maybe to about 3, but that will come in play later and probably will not matter. So let's leave behind the pin tool. We are now going to try to animate some of the features. So I want to just do something really simple. I want her head to be nodding. I want the puffball to have a little bit of secondary action. And I also want the arms and the gills to move up and down. I know we said we weren't going to worry about the gills, but I'm not going to puppet pin these. So we can start with the head. And if I want, I could also add an element by having the body rocking back and forth, but that might be later. So for the head, we already have our joint. We're going to go to rotation. We already put our little keyframe down. We're just going to move and do the same thing we did with the puppet pins actually earlier. So I'm going to move her head a little bit forward and then take that first frame, Control C, Control V. And if you want to get really good, like frame by frame movements, I recommend holding down Shift while you're moving your little guy around your timeline. That works. So, but as you can see, if you keep them as is, that looks super duper stale. That looks like old crackers. We are going to highlight all of these. I said we were going to highlight all these, thank you. And we're going to go to Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease, and that usually gets a start of looking better, which, yeah, that already looks really good. But I always like to have a little bit of lingering at the front, so I'm actually going to extend these so it's not super fast. So, yeah. What we're going to do is hit the FN, Shift, F3 again. We're going to hit this little magnet tool so it's easier to find these, and you can see we actually have our curve helpers right here. So what I like to do is take the keyframe that was marked in the middle, press that, just delete it. And from there, you can actually make a much, much, much smoother curve if you only have 2 keyframes. So, and you could also add a little bit of lingering if you want. I'm gonna make it linger a second, so I'm gonna move the curve more towards the left, so the going down is a lot slower and the going up is pretty fast. And remember, make sure you're on edit value graph because, oh, actually, does that work how I wanted? Yeah, it does. Great. So yeah, make sure you're on edit value graph. I actually think this is a little too slow. Slow down still works if I want to, but if I want a more dramatic head bob, I'm gonna have to move this curve really downwards. Yeah. And you can also move that out. Yeah, so that's a little bit more forward and dramatic. I like that. And as you can see, everything is moving along with it. So now let's try the puffball. If you hold Shift and go back to your first frame, it'll lock onto your first frame, and we can select the puffball and exit out of the little menu, which is also, again, FN Shift 3, and then tackle our little puffball. Now, if you want, this is just what I do, you can go down to the head. You can take the keyframes, highlight them, and since we already have an anchor point and we're not highlighting the position, this will not move them. Control V, and that keeps the movement that was in the original. Oh, and I put it on the wrong layer. My bad. That keeps the movement that was in the original. But we can go down, FN 3, and we can make it a little bit more dramatic. So there's a little bit of follow through. And since there is follow through, I'm actually going to extend it a little bit so it stays behind. Actually, I might remap this entirely, but if you do want to do something like that, you obviously can. Actually, wait, there we go. I think this is what I meant. Yeah. Yeah. It's not perfect. I am actually going to remap this real quick, which, exiting out of that, just going to delete the keyframes. Make sure you're always on your first keyframe when you delete something, or else it's going to take the rotation of the position you deleted it from. It's going to stay like that, and you're going to have to readjust it. So I'm just going to hit that. Shift, hold to the end, it snaps onto this little guy right here. Click that. And then I'm going to go somewhere in the middle when the head's at its peak. And I'm going to hit the rotate tool and rotate it forward. So now it kind of has that little pizzazz. And I actually want it to linger here as it's coming down. So I actually think I'm going to make it take longer to get to the peak. So it kind of has that follow through action. And longer to get to the end. So it has that. And of course we hate staleness. So we're going to easy ease. But something you can do actually, since you know it comes down, it's kind of subtle, it just kind of stops. What you can do is enter our little curves menu again and make it so this curve at the end goes up above where the previous curve was. So now it kind of has a bounce back, like a really minor bounce back, and you can always readjust this. Ooh, perfect. So other than that, this is kind of moving how I want it to. Perfect. So I don't really have to adjust it again. And I can do the same to other things. So I'm gonna be right back and do that. As per my last step, for the follow through, it could also go for the anticipation. So I'm going to use this arm as an example. FN Shift 3. You can go, I think, above again this beginning point, and it should extend a little forward and then go back, which is super cool. Adds a really nice effect. Look at that. Perfect. Now I'm gonna do the other arm, and then we're gonna add some awesome nice effects and do some lip sync. Okay, so as we can see, at least to me, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty cute. She's doing a little forward thing. Now, another trick we can do if we want to change the expression. Remember, I had those eyes that were all put together. So let's go to the eyes. I called it eyes all. And we can see, if we show all these, all of our eyes. Now, obviously, they're not going to be together, but I want to have her do a little blink and then come out like a little blink and then come out looking a little sly, a little cheeky. So what we can do is we can turn all those on. And if we want to see both the video and the eyes, I'm going to press this lock right here and then click video. And as you can see, it pulls up another video, which is really nice. They're not going to be playing back at the same time, so you just kind of have to make an inference by stopping where you want this. And like, as I can see, she's fully forward there. So these aren't labeled, so I'm just going to do them by turning them on and off. You can also see right here. Sorry, right there. So, I think this top one's her little blink. So I'm gonna hold down on this, press shift, and then drag it until it snaps to the little viewer. So that's nice, but obviously we can't have her blinking and having her eyes open at the same time. So we're gonna go to her normal eyes, which are down here. We're going to, again, shift, hold, drag until it snaps, and then we're gonna press Alt, and then the right bracket key to cut it off at the end, and then it usually overlaps it a little bit, so I'm going to extend that, hold at the end, shift, drag, boom, little blink, and then we gotta, when she comes back up, I want her to be a little sly and cheeky, so again, I'm going to go to the blink, Alt, right bracket, and then I'm going to unmute her little sly expression, go to the end. I'm gonna go on the slyness expression, press Alt left bracket key, and then I usually go it's 1 frame ahead. So you can see it immediately, or it isn't. There we go, never mind, I did it right the first time. So, did that. And since this is a short animation, you can see it stops, though the original video, you can click on the video, stops at around 2 seconds. But as you can see, the timing's a little bit off, but I can fix it real quick. I'm gonna pause to do that. Pausing now. Hello, editing me here. I completely botched this recording so hard. I recorded the audio when the film wasn't rolling, and I recorded the film when the audio wasn't rolling. So that's why you're getting editing voiceover. So basically what I was about to do, which I will probably speed up, is I was going to go to the effects and presets little tab and apply the hand-drawn effect to everything, which you can go and just type hand and then drag the hand-drawn effect little filter onto specifically your line art if you have the PSD files. What I was doing with the torso is that I was also applying it to the color because it has patterns and I wanted those patterns to move too. I will put the settings that I usually set it to on screen. It's usually set way too rough and way too high for the size that I am doing the boil line effect. That is what it's called, a boil line. But I will post that, and then basically you just can select all of the effect little attributes in your timeline and then copy them and paste them to every other layer you want to apply them to, and it should stay the same unless you have time keyframes to set effects, and then you want to set it to the exact point you want those effects to be. Really, you can just paste them anywhere. Okay,